The modern age. New consoles are springing up with Microsoft releasing the legendary Xbox 360 at the end of 2005. If you were lucky and your console didn't stare at you like it was the Eye of Sauron, on October 23, 2007, Project Aces along with Bandai Namco would release the console-exclusive Ace Combat 6 Fires of Liberation onto the world. Reviewers across the world would review the game rather favorably, but in the end, Ace Combat 6 would only rake in 436,000 sales worldwide. This is quite low compared to other entries in the Ace Combat franchise, but mainly this can be attributed to the fact that the game was an Xbox 360 exclusive, which is a fairly low-selling console in Japan. This is because it had to compete with the domestic consoles, the Sony PlayStation 3 and the Nintendo Wii, which had considerable footholds in Japan. In addition, Japan was also shifting towards more portable gaming platforms at the time, so that didn't help the game out either. Ace Combat 6 was the first game to also have DLC content added in at a later date, with unique aircraft skins such as the pre-order Mobius F-15 and the Yellow Squadron F-15, but also skins that one would expect with the franchise, like the game's previous aces, protagonists, and antagonists, but for the first time also skins based off the Idolmaster franchise. Then there's also the Ace of Aces mode, which remixed campaign missions into harder variants of those specific missions, and packs that supplemented the online modes like co-op. These would range from free to around about 400 Microsoft points, or about $4 or so. You may notice that there are a few technical bugs that occur with the footage as well. The missile smoke is completely missing, which is one of the major visual elements to Ace Combat 6 and modern dogfighting. There's also white shadows around the aircraft, and there's a transparency bug that causes a box to form in the sky sometimes. The reason for this is my method of playing the game. There are currently 4 different ways to play Ace Combat 6. One is to just have an Xbox 360 and a disc copy of the game. While I do have both, my poor Halo 4 Xbox 360 decided to give up the ghost recently and Red Ring on me. 2 is to have a disc copy or the digital pre-order bonus for Ace Combat 7, and an Xbox One or an Xbox Series S/X to play the game with its backwards compatibility mode. I don't have an Xbox One, and the Xbox Series X prices are pretty expensive. 3 is to rip the ISO off the disc and use the Xenia emulator to play the game, and while this does look good, Xenia is far from perfect and the compatibility with Ace Combat 6 is a bit off here and there. While the game is playable from start to finish, cutscenes and other audio are broken at times, causing those sounds to be completely absent or just stutter. Option 4 is pretty close to the third option, but instead of using Xenia to emulate the game, a bunch of talented programmers and coders have managed a way to recompile Ace Combat 6 into a format where it just acts like a normal program file. It is super simple to do, and it makes the game run natively on PC, with the only caveats being the white shadows, minor texture bugs, a few transparency bugs, and a lack of missile smokes, which honestly just turns the CFA-44 from an already scary aircraft into a horror game, as you never know where one of those ADMMs will smack you from. As you can tell, I chose to do the recompilation since that saves me money on having to track down an Xbox that works, and it lets me play and record things natively at 60 FPS as the original game was locked to 30 FPS. Now that we have the technical problems out of the way, join me as we explore the now functional aircraft horror game that is Ace Combat 6. Ulysses 1994 XF-04 was a threat to the entirety of Strange Reel. In particular, the 3 nations of the continent of Anea were impacted rather hard. Within the continent are the nations of Nordernavik, Emeria, and Estovakia. While Nordernavik and Emeria recovered rather quickly after the impacts, the nation that was hit the hardest was Estovakia. The impact itself would cause tensions between these smaller groups that were vying for control over the region to boil over. This caused the Estovakian Civil War from 2007 to 2013, making it the longest conflict in the history of Strange Reel. The factions that fought in this war were the Lies United Front, the Eastern Faction, the Island Coalition, the Independent Terror Federation, and the Northern Highlands Faction. They would all declare war on the LUF along with each other. During this conflict, the group known as the Eastern Faction would produce varying equipment using some technology from Belka, including the Aigion Heavy Command platform, along with its aerial fleet, the elite squadrons known as Strigan and Vampire. The usage of these squadrons, along with the completion of aircraft such as the CFA-44 Nosferatu, would lead to victory over the LUF and the other factions fighting for control over Estovakia. Once the dust settled, a group known only as the Generals would form a military regime in Slovakia, with the remnants of the LUF harassing this new regime. This would end with an attack on an Amarian guarded facility. This would bring a meeting that ended with tensions between Ameria and Slovakia increasing, leading to the surprise attack on the Amarian capital Grace Maria later on in 2015. This is where you come in as Talisman of Garuda Squadron. Your squadron's task is to fend off and protect Grace Maria from this surprise attack. As usual, we will take a look at the framing device for the story mode in Ace Combat 6. As once again we return to the land of pre-rendered cutscenes. This time it is a story about a civilian woman named Melissa, who witnesses the Slovakian invasion from the ground, as she had just sent her daughter Matilda off on a field trip to the castle. She watches and assumes that during the Slovakian attack that her daughter Matilda was killed in the initial invasion, and it follows her tale as she learns early on about her husband's death, but also her journey doesn't stop as she hears that her daughter is actually alive and with some help will eventually return to Grace Maria to reunite with her daughter. But her story isn't the only one that is going on, as there's also the tale of the former Slovakian instructor and pilot who was injured in the initial invasion. He now works as an intelligence officer and gets a perspective about the people that the war was affecting the most. Now, this story isn't an overall terrible one, but it isn't perfect by far. I can see what it was trying to do, as it was going for something similar to Ace Combat 4's portrayal of war, showing the impact that it has on the innocents below, but also trying to show that even in the face of adversity, that sometimes that patriotism and a little bit of hope is all that one needs to keep moving forward. But I found myself really not attaching to any of the characters throughout the story, except for the Slovakian officer, as it shows how he goes from a stern patriot of his own country to someone that, as he experiences what strife Slovakia has brought onto Ameria, especially to children, his loyalty starts to shift and waver as it makes him feel more standout as a character within the game. Of course, we can't have an aircraft-based game without aircraft in it, and sadly Ace Combat 6 has a very limited roster with only 15 available aircraft to pilot, and 14 of them are available throughout just playing the campaign, with the CFA-44 Nosferatu being available after a certain requirement is met. Returning is the way to purchase aircraft and weapons. This time it's without any gimmicks attached. Get better scores in missions, get money, buy aircraft, and then just buy their special weapons. But here's a little trick. You can save a ton of money in the game by just using the S-16 for most of the campaign. There is a reason why that I'll explain once it gets to that point, but for now we should get up into the air in a scramble to defend our city. Once we are up in the air, it is revealed that we are the only aircraft without a wingman, so we are given our friend for the entire game. This is Marcus Shamrock Lampert, and he is now our Garuda too. Since the game has a tutorial, it starts off with a little bit more action, and while it is the standard destroy some bombers, helicopters, and their escorts, it is also the mission that sets up the entire stage and the way that the story will unfold. So while that plays out in the background, let's talk about some of the new stuff that is added into Ace Combat 6. First up is the Wingman command system, which returns from the previous Ace Combat games, but with a small twist. It only has two directions this time. Attack and cover are the two options, which at first glance is a disappointment, since our beloved Disperse is gone. Rest in peace, Disperse. But there's also a meter underneath the radar that slowly fills up as objectives are completed and enemies are destroyed. And while at first it doesn't have much of a purpose with it filling up rather slowly, once one of its sections are completed, it transforms the squadron command menu from a "Hey Shamrock, go kill that thing" to a "Hey everyone, I really hate everything in front of me and I want it gone" button, as it will ping every single ally in the area, including ground forces and ships, to attack the targets that the player has in front of them. But attacking isn't the only thing that they can do. Got a swarm of Slovakians on your tail that are causing you an issue? Do the allied cover command to have them gang up on anyone that has a bead on you. And honestly, I love this system. The allies, including Shamrock, are aggressive, they do full damage, and they will turn the tide of some of the more chaotic furballs that occur in the game. Back to the main screen, in the top left, when targeting an enemy, you'll see a small picture-in-picture display of the aircraft flying around. This will let you see them get shot down without having to use the munitions tracking camera. Those picture-in-picture displays are also used for pre-rendered shots of the other pilots and the AWACS in the top right when they are talking for some exposition, and I will admit, as cheesy as some of the dialogue gets with the whole Dance with the Angels thing, it does give a sense of camaraderie in the air with pilots like Avalanche and Windhover actually communicating with each other during a fight. They also slightly improved the targeting functions in the game, as it will now display the word next beside the signature of an enemy, letting you know who you will be locking onto next. In terms of things that the player can control like their aircraft, 2 new features have been added with the brand new high G turns, which allows when pressing down the air brake and throttle at the same time, the pilot will forget that they have blood in their body and that airframes have limits, pulling extremely high Gs, letting them turn nearly 90 degrees on a dime as if they flip the AOA limit switch on their aircraft. Now be warned, you will bleed a ton of speed during this, and you will stall if your speed drops too low. The other thing that was added into the player's arsenal is the read-ahead fire system that was implemented. Normally, nimble enemies will dodge your missiles, and that can be quite frustrating. This new system lets the player take advantage of the simple physics of leading the target with your missiles to reduce the amount of turning that they have to do. In turn, the game will increase their tracking capability and make them hit more often. You can tell when read ahead is active by the shoot prompt on the HUD, and a sound will also play when it actually works. Now that we have covered the basics, the story does progress a little bit as the Estevakians deploy the ace squadron known as Strigan, along with the Agaion shooting its Nimbus cruise missiles to our location, and we are ordered to evacuate. Of course, none of the pilots want to do that. This is their home after all, and the capital of Ameria as well, but it's also where a lot of their families are. Unlike them, we don't have a wife with 2 kids at home, so we ran across the return line. Now that the second mission has begun, before we actually get up into the air, like in Ace Combat 5, you get to choose what aircraft Shamrock gets to use, along with what weapon he takes up as well, and don't worry, you don't have to purchase 2 of every plane. Although giving Shamrock some aircraft can have some hilarious effects, like the ADMM on the CFA-44. But we are scrambled up into the air as our airbase is being attacked by bombers and their escorts, and this mission introduces a new mechanic that has been sitting on our screen for the entirety of the last mission, ESM level. You see those massive blue circles on the minimap? That is your friendly ESM. Flying near that is going to supercharge your missile's capabilities. They will track better, but also gain a faster rate of fire. So sticking in these circles is definitely a bonus. It isn't necessary to succeed, but when you're playing on the higher difficulties, every little thing will help. The enemy can also do the inverse with a pulsating red circle that will increase their combat capabilities, and in harder difficulties such as the DLC Ace of Aces mode, they will lower your ESM level to a maximum of -2, which will reduce your combat capabilities. Special weapons are not affected by the enemy's ESM, however, so if you have like the CFA-44 with the ADMM, you're not going to be really that bothered, especially in air-to-air combat. Once all of the bombers are shot down, it is mission over, and we can begin our offensive on the occupied areas of Ameria. Now, I would like to introduce to you the reason why the F-16 is a very good aircraft for most of the game, and I ended up using it all the way up to mission 9 of the game. That is the special weapon it gets, well, at least one of them, as it does have the rocket launchers. Rocket launchers in Ace Combat are normally a pretty divisive weapon. They range in effectiveness depending on the game you play, and generally they do okay damage to structures. But in Ace Combat 6, the rocket launchers in this game are not only very easy to use, they can do this. Grab some missiles. What did they load into these things? The little fucking V2s.
Use the Operation ID device when the battle gets too heavy. Don't let enemy forces reach.
That's one volley and you like wipe out like 90% of the group. Hey look, there's more ground enemies. Oh look, they're hiding.
Commencing full rocket fire.
What did we put in these? V2? I think that we stuck miniature V2 warheads into the rocket launchers or something, but the real reason why the RCL is extremely good in the mission structure for Ace Combat 6 is that unlike other Ace Combat games, the battlefields for this entry are very large with dense clusters of enemies. Now the reason why they're so large is that there are multiple operations occurring at the same time, which of course focuses on air-to-air and air-to-ground. The player will get to choose which operation they start closest to before the mission starts, but they can fly off at any time to do any of the others. Upon completing an operation, the player will be given a chunk of the Allied support meter, but also those forces will join in when you actually issue a Allied attack command. So say if there's a Navy vessel, they will pelt the air with flak fire and are rather effective when asked to help. The only issue with using the F-16 as much as I do in the playthrough is that it is dreadfully slow and carries rather limited amounts of standard missiles. It is the starter aircraft, so while it is good, it will get outclassed later on. Missions 4 and 5 are very similar to one another, once again being the large sprawling battlefields, and while they do progress the story forward, They are pretty boring all things considered, so we can glance over them, as the first one is assaulting the Bartolomeo Fortress. Meanwhile, Mission 5 is creating another environmental concern for the rest of Strangereal, as there's an oil rig and you know how that goes, as we are attempting to land and get a foothold on the mainland. The thing that I want to mention is that during these missions, while they are large and rather amazing to look at, you do not have to complete all 3 of the operations to progress. You can still get an S rank if you are aiming for that as well. If you just completely miss one of the operations entirely, just as long as you destroy enough things, you'll be fine. Now, Mission 6 is where things start to pick up just a tiny bit, but it also introduces one of the coolest things that makes the assault-style missions feel dynamic. The mission is quite large, so the player may run out of ammunition. Of course, they can run across the return line, which can take a ton of time out of your mission timer. Instead, if you help the allied troops take over one of the airfields, you can actually just land on that airfield mid-battle to get restocked and repaired. It is a feature I would love to see come back in future titles, as it makes these large battles feel like you're really making an impact and you are getting rewarded for it. I also learned not to mess around with high G turns when you just took off from the runway, because I love this. That's actually a really cool feature. That is a very cool feature, being able to just capture a runway and then take off from it. The amount of times that you'd see that in one of the other Ace comps, like, oh, we taken over a... Don't try to do a high G turn when you're not like 2 feet off the ground. Nobody ever said I was a good pilot. Now that I have died in the game, one of the things that they introduced into Ace Combat 6 is the checkpoint system, which honestly, with the length of the multi-operation missions, I can understand why they added it in, even if it can be abused for ammo, and it does make the game feel a little bit easier. Once the mission gets its update, the Estevakians have sent out the Strigan Squadron to attack us. What they forget is that there is a hornet's nest of teammates with very itchy trigger fingers behind me. After some very slow dogfighting, we take out all of the Strigan Squadron, and now it's just wiping out the usual ground targets. I'll also say that while a bunch of the dialogue is very campy during this part, I do quite like it. It feels like we're just a bunch of friends taking back their country together, and even though I really don't feel connected to any of the pilots personally, it somehow feels like I've known them for forever. Now, this is where I will say one thing about this game that is its biggest negative. Ace Combat 6 has a very repetitive mission structure. It is always the same 3 to 5 mission operation structure, with often escorting allies to an objective, and that does get a little bit boring at times. While it does extend the playtime of Ace Combat 6 out to around about 6 hours if you are rushing the game, and about 8.5 if you are playing it leisurely. Now, towards the end of this operation, the last thing that we have to do is defend the said ground forces from the enemy, who has the highly experimental XB-70 bomber. I know Strangereal isn't in our world, as squadrons fly the F-15S MTD and other prototypes like the S-32, but sometimes it makes me wonder what is the military budget of every nation in the franchise. Once that final bomber goes down, we get a mission update. Something very slow is coming towards us. Turns out they are drones, and now I have awoken some 3-line pilot off in the distance. But unlike the usual drone technology that we fight against, these ones just kind of fly around and don't do a whole lot besides being an inconvenience to take down. That is because these drones are acting as a targeting beacon for the Nimbus cruise missiles, and they are coming in hot. Wherever those drones are, there is a little explosion, which is a bit bigger than a standard burst missile, so avoiding their flight paths will become necessary to survive, and at first I was low on ammo and partially damaged, so this happened.
Innovation craft remaining. These guys are... Talisman's been shot down!
I learned that no matter what difficulty you play on, those explosions will chunk you, but thanks to the powers of checkpoint abuse, I get a full stock of ammunition and go into the next fight with it. Which is really the only negative of using the F-16 this late into the campaign. You have to be very efficient with its ammunition. It doesn't have a lot of it. Fortunately, we did take out every single drone on the second attempt, even if we had to use the Allied Attack Command a bunch. And one thing I will mention, since Shamrock talks about it here, unlike in Ace Combat 5, Shamrock can take damage just like you, and at the end of the mission you can actually see if he survived. But there is one caveat. He doesn't get shot down in a traditional sense, instead just doing the Yellow Squadron technique of running away until the end of the mission. Our next operation is capturing San Loma, which once again is a multi-operation mission, and at first, we covered the ground troops since a lot of the targets were nicely bunched up, and you know...
San Loma, take out any enemy forces obstructing our landing. We can't let them take the city.
San Loma's got some pretty tough defenses. Going it alone would be much too risky. Commencing full rocket fire. Enemy tank has been destroyed. Ground target destroyed.
Then we protected the Marigold, since these ships are absolutely amazing as allied support units once you clear out the air and sea targets that are threatening them. Of course, boats and anti-ship aircraft are not the only thing that's going to be threatening us. This mission also does feature the enemy and their newfound love of drones that are guiding the cruise missiles in hope of damaging our forces but also knocking us out of the air. You can shoot down the drones out of the air, but honestly, even when I played the game a long time ago on Ace difficulty, they weren't that big of a threat and were rather easy to dodge. Our allies took out the final target for us, and that seals the deal. We have now captured the port of San Loma, and we can now prepare for the hardest fight in the entire game. The Igaion is what I would say if it wasn't hilariously easy to beat, especially after picking up the Su-33, and it comes with the S-13 rocket launchers. Now here's where the fun begins, as in this fight against the Igaion...
Talisman's gone down!
Okay, good job, me. Don't let me finish the explanation before exploding on the major aircraft. As I was mentioning, the Igaion Command Cruiser, also known as the Great Shadow, this massive ship was created from Belkin technology and designed as an improvement to the Racevelger. Because of course it is. Also on this mission, you can find the former Belkin ace, Lorenz Riedel, if you are playing on Expert or higher. It has some smaller battleships that fly around with it, carrying ESM technology that enhance not only the Igaion itself, but also the Strigan squadron that is housed in the mobile hangar. Now remember the RCL, it is a delete button for everything in this mission, so I will let it play out to show you how quick that even me, an idiot, can get through this fight.
Let him go.
Doesn't bother me. The Gaijus? I have some missiles.
Commencing full rocket fire.
Here I have one single missile. Oh, here comes the Strigan squadron. Come to be an annoyance to us.
Talisman, it's the Reaper's emblem. Let's pay him back once and for all. Talisman, keep the pressure on. Just a little further now.
Ow! Where'd that come from? I swear to God,
Full rocket fire.
the bug with the invisible missiles is painful sometimes.
Number one down. It's going down.
I swear to God, the RCLs are so funny. You just fly in and are just like, hey, by the way, vomit. You just vomit missiles onto them, and then they all die. You just kind of come flying in, and you're just like, meh, I hate you.
Full rocket fire. Number two electric.
Ooh, that was close. I still wiped out like 3/4 of it.
Careful now.
You leave me all alone. I don't have flares. I hope you know that. I do not have any form of countermeasure. I shot the top of it and it still destroyed it. What the f... I love the rocket launchers in this game, man. They're so much better than, like, 7s. 7 had, like, I'm gonna say it, some of the worst rocket launchers ever. You know, I just realized with the invisible missile glitch, well, it's not really a glitch, it's a bug with the emulation. I have a feeling that, the fight against Pasternak is going to be miserable. Because you have to watch out for his ADMM smokes. Missiles don't have smoke. Oh no.
Commencing full rocket fire. Critical hit to the aerial battleship.
Okay, now the skies are clear from Strigan. Hey look, it's one sole AA gun. I can hit it from the top, I bet. Oh, and I took out all of the engines on the one side. Are you tired of the Agaion? Use rockets. Ooh! There goes.
Excellent work. Now it's our turn.
Let's go. RCLs are funny. I love these things. Who designed this? He's flying and just vomiting missiles. It's all gone. See, now the Agaion is nothing more than just a reef in the middle of the ocean and is no longer a threat to us or the troops that are in the region. These skies are safe from cruise missiles. So now we get to go on to the next mission, which is the multi-operation mission layout that we are used to, but probably has one of the most fun parts in the entire game. I love the little tiny tunnel runs that go underneath the fortress. It is quite unique, and honestly I found it really fun to do these, even if I had to slow down a bunch to avoid becoming a Su-33 shaped smear on the ground. But we have now captured another fortress and are very close to finally taking back the city of Grace Maria. Now these next two missions are what I will call the story-focused but also head-scratching filler missions. These two missions drive home character motivations for Shamrock, but also has a twist that makes it feel like there were no consequences for our actions. The mission starts off with Shamrock being a little bit more emotional as we are rather close to the capital. This could very well be the final battle that puts us in range for a recapture of the city. But the ground forces are right, we can't let our emotions get the best of us. It is the standard massive battlefield mission structure that the entire game uses. Once the mission updates, we get an emergency wire from command that demands that we retreat. Ghostai will tell us this.
You've been ordered to evacuate. Mission command has ordered an evacuation. All planes, cease fire immediately. I repeat, all planes cease fire immediately. You have been ordered to retreat.
What do you mean retreat? This is no time to screw around, Ghost Eye.
This is no joke. I'll say it again. Cease fire immediately. That's an order. Retreat from the airspace.
Of course, Shamrock wants revenge on Estavakia, and even over the comms you hear that they are targeting specifically our squadron. This is the first time in the entire game where we hear that Ghostai is actually mad at us. Like, the voice actor here did a good job showing that we did disobey direct orders and that we are going to get scolded. At the end of this though, he does just sound like a mom telling us that we made a big mistake and that we will be penalized for this.
All planes are down. Now I can finally get back to Grace Maria.
You've made a huge mistake. There's no getting around a penalty for this.
This penalty is no longer being able to fly, and no, you're not getting stuck in some penal unit. That is until they realize that Estavakia is about to load up chemical WMDs to be used on Grace Maria, so they send in the only duo that are stupid enough to fly into a canyon to take care of the threat. Now, the mission itself has a rather unique mechanic that the player must deal with. As you are flying towards the targets, you will get spotted by them, and once in range, you must attack them. This will pop up a timer, and you have to eliminate all targets in that sector to advance forward. It is a really simple mechanic, and once the player gets all the way to the end, they just have to complete that one last time and destroy the catalyst support units. We are now redeemed and are able to fly again, I suppose. Now here's where I made a very dumb mistake. It is not my aircraft, but the weaponry I decided to take with me. For you see, on the way back, the enemy will keep spawning above us, and while they are currently not a threat and are not deemed as targets, I would recommend taking them out or at least bringing anti-air loadouts. This is because at the very end, we are told to take out as many of the aircraft as we can while lasting 3 or so minutes in one of the most chaotic and dangerous furballs in Ace Combat history. There are aircraft flying around everywhere, missile alarms going off constantly, and...
Range.
Oh!
Route 1, your engine nozzle is damaged.
Talisman, do you read me?
Okay, shoot down everything. I died in this mission, so I had to restart from the checkpoint, but I did manage to get to the point where we hear that Avalanche and the other members of the Amerian Air Force have come to turn the tide of battle. Now, since everything is focused on you, and you do get a full Allied attack meter, it is very easy just to fly defensively for a bit and engage the Allied cover command. Once the final aircraft is shot down, we can move on to the battle that everyone in the Amerian army was waiting for. The liberation of our capital. It is time for the liberation of Grace Maria. I chose to start with the Sea Invasion Force since I picked the Eurofighter and it happens to have an RCL and we know how that goes for ground targets. I also crashed into the ocean as I got hit by one of those invisible SAMs that was launched at me, which in these games will lock your controls for a second and drag your aircraft downwards. I was close to the water and, well, time to restart. Oop!
Somebody went down.
I forgot that when you get hit with a missile, your plane just kind of goes straight down. The second attempt went much better with the RCLs just doing their thing. Then I started to attack the air targets, which include some ESM aircraft like 767s when this happened.
Talisman's gone down.
Cock! Son of a bitch! I war thundered myself and ran nose first right into one of the 767s after it was destroyed, so once again I had to restart. The third attempt went as planned with the destruction of the 767s and the boats. Once again I decided to attack the airfield, as I remembered where it was on the map. Now that the airfield is captured, I perform a quick landing to swap over to the XMA-6, which we are going to use here very soon. Once we are diving down to attack the rest of the ground forces, we get a short cutscene. Strigan has returned, this time with Ilya Pasternak as their lead. He is flying the experimental CFA-44 Nosferatu, an aircraft so expensive for the Estavakians that it was called a vampire for their economy, hence the nickname Nosferatu.
Gentlemen, I do not believe a lady on Earth would be able to resist us now.
I love that line. It is so cheesy, but it's also memorable, and I just absolutely love it. But now that we have gained our capital back, we are suddenly swarmed by UAVs, as the CFA-44 is not only fast, it is stealth, and it has the ever so deadly ADMM to worry about. Which, trust me, in the normal game is a stunning visual with these smoke trails flying everywhere, but we don't have those smoke trails yet in the recompile, so it just turns the fight into the world's scariest game of peekaboo. That was a very, very long dogfight, but now Ameria is free from Estavakian control, and we have done it. We have liberated the capital, and the war is finally over, even though we let a few of Strigan get away. Now we get to do a simple patrol mission during a celebration, and it is a beautiful nighttime operation with the fireworks going off, and it's just flying between checkpoints. But something doesn't feel right. While everyone else wants to have a good time, Shamrock, who is normally quite energetic and happy, isn't feeling that way, and it deadens what normally would be a happy mood. After hearing what happened to his family, I can understand his thoughts. I would feel the same way after losing the one thing that I cared about, the one thing I was trying so hard to defend. It really does make him feel human, and the VA did a great job to show the break in his mental health and the pain that he was really going through.
I hope you don't mind. I need to be alone tonight. My wife and daughter are both dead. It's just been confirmed. I saved my country, but I lost my family. What kind of an ace can't even protect his own family? Monica and Jessica. How could I let this happen? Once this mission's over, I'm turning in my wings. I've had it. I have no more reason to fly.
But just like in Ace Combat 5, heroes never get a break, as now unknown contacts are lighting up our radar. But these aren't aircraft, they are MIRV cruise missiles, and they are flying rapidly towards the city, so we have to intercept them to prevent any damage. This mission is a good setup for the next one, but also a test to see if the player has been using their wingman commands throughout the game, as even with the F-22 and a fully loaded stock of QAAM or multi-target missiles, you may struggle to take out every single one of the missiles by yourself. Once the final group goes down, for some reason as a kid I struggled with that mission, probably because I tried to do everything myself as I mentioned earlier, and instead of using the mechanics that were given to me. The Estavakians have started to launch long-range cruise missiles from something called the Chandelier. Despite that, it makes me want to listen to the song by Sia. But otherwise, it is just a giant Stonehenge-esque railgun, but instead of being multiple small ones, it is just a massive railgun designed for the same purpose. But how are we to attack it? Well, let's reverse one of the cutscenes here, with the Estavakian officer being featured. After some convincing from the Estavakian woman and Melissa, he lets them have access to his laptop. He then asks them to get the information on the super weapon up to the pilots above. This uses the local radio station to basically get access to the military radio frequency so that way she can talk to them. She ends up giving us the data needed on the railgun, which cannot move in-game but was built on a floating iceberg, so using engines it can sail into different positions. As soon as we fully approach the railgun, we get a cinematic shot along with Stricken Squadron launching up for what will become their final sortie. While we are flying around in the initial furball, the data is transmitted to us, and in a rather cool cinematic we get to see how many targets are really on this railgun. So first, we have to take out all of the cooling units. Once all of them are destroyed on the outside, you would think that the railgun would power down, but there's actually a hidden one underneath the unit.
Almost there. Just a little further. Gotcha. Did you get the data?
Data confirmed. Now pull up, Garuda 2.
I'm losing thrust. But maybe I won't need it. Let's see what these angel wings can do.
Shamrock is damaged and ends up bailing out, but the cooling vent is not destroyed, so who else is dumb enough to do a Star Wars-esque trench run but us?
Enemy plane shot down.
Okay, that didn't go as planned. Fuck. Fuck!
Garuda 1 down.
Yeah, I died a lot trying to get to the final cooling unit, but we finally managed to destroy it, and the fight is over, right? Nope, the railgun has another thing to shoot because it can manually cool itself down by splitting the barrel open. This leaves its volatile core open to attack. So we do what we do and perform one of the coolest tunnel runs in the history of Ace Combat as we are flying down the barrel of the chandelier. I don't care whether it's a straight shot or not, this is cool as hell. The core explodes, and we fly out the back of the railgun as it starts to collapse. Parts of it break off and fall into the water below, and it is finally over. Estevakia has fallen, and Ameria has won the war, and things are finally at peace once again. There is a short cutscene that shows that Shamrock did survive just at the cost of his legs. But now he is stuck on the ground, he has gotten a new perspective on life once again, having entered a close healing friendship with Melissa's family, enjoying the peace in the city he once fought for. And then it closes. Ace Combat 6 has come to an end, and with that, we should take a look at the extra content that is available to the player. I'm going to say it, Ace Combat 6 has very little unlocks that can be really mentioned. You have the usual suspects like SP Campaign, Ace Difficulty, Scene Viewer, and Music Player that are unlocked in their usual manners. You unlock Ace Difficulty, requiring a completion of the game on Expert, similar to Ace Combat 4. The CFA 44 Nosferatu can be unlocked once the player completes the game on hard difficulty. The Aces mechanic is still present with these skins being unlocked for killing specific aircraft. This also ties into the assault records that are unlocked by completing the game with different operations and enemies defeated said during missions. If the player completes the game on Ace difficulty, they get a very unique gamer picture. Remember those? If they are playing on the Xbox 360. At the end of the day, Ace Combat 6 is a very good game. Not really a hidden gem as it's a direct mainline title, but it was a game that was overshadowed by being a platform exclusive on a system that a lot of Ace Combat fans probably didn't own. Its storyline is a little bit campy as it just repeats a lot of what Ace Combat 4 attempted, but with a more melodramatic tone, having multiple characters that are interacting with the world as it changes, and instead of it being a retelling, it does have that juxtaposition, but the only issue that I had was that I didn't really care for the characters that were acting out the story that much. But it also felt like the game didn't give me a reason to fully care for these characters either, as they interact with just that one enemy soldier who was there during the invasion and then got injured. And while you could say that about Ace Combat 4's story, they also painted that story from the perspective of a child who is orphaned and is seeking shelter, finding a unique sense of friendship and kindness within the enemy, but also showing that while in the air that Yellow Squadron is a ruthless squadron that is just going to take out their enemies, they also do have a soft side for the people of Erusia in the occupied territories that they are in. It makes them feel very human instead of the sort of generic feeling characters on the ground that they have in Ace Combat 6. I can at least say that the pilots were enjoyable, as their personalities were rather nice to have when you are flying through the often rather large play spaces that are on offer. The way that they interact with each other and Shamrock having that emotional desire to get back home, it makes them feel like a group that you have known for years, despite the fact that you'll have very little attachment to them as a player. Like, I don't even know Avalanche's name, and I want to go get a beer with him. I would love to see a future title expand on these sprawling battlefield mechanics that were seen in the game, but maybe go with the dynamic approach more often. Capture an airfield? Well, now you don't need to go to the return point, but you see that airfield get bombed because you didn't defend it? Well, now you're going back to the return line. The way that they implemented it into Ace Combat 6 didn't feel super deep, and while it had some cool moments, it felt like it was also there just to pad out the rather short mission count, as there are only 15 missions in the entire game. The game also lovingly features that yellow piss filter that literally every game of this era had. It was an aesthetic choice, that was for sure, and hopefully with the recompile they can figure out a way to just de-yellow the game, because honestly Ace Combat 6 is really pretty without that yellow filter. It just looks a little bit weird is all. Sadly, in this video, I could not play the multiplayer or the co-op missions, as using the recompile, I could not connect to the Xbox Live services, but I do remember that it was really fun when I did get a chance to play it years ago. The servers are still up and active though if you really wanted to play it, and that's always open as well. Maybe someday I'll host a stream where everyone can join in for a few co-op missions, but as a little while off, as we could also just play Ace Combat Infinity instead, as that is also working online now too, so we can go play that as a community, and that would be actually kind of fun. In my opinion, Ace Combat 6 is a solid entry in the franchise, if not a little bit too short. It did introduce things that would be seen in later Ace Combat games like the high G turns, and it is definitely worth a play no matter which way that you manage to play it. Honestly, for the full experience, I recommend getting a disc copy of the game. I found mine sealed in box a year ago for around about $20, and then go get a cheap Xbox 360 or Xbox One to play it on. Even though the recompile is amazing, it lacks a few things that I'm sure will be ironed out eventually, as they did release a patch while I was actually working on this video that does fix things such as the cutscenes running at 60 FPS and running out of time. But for now, we have liberated Grace Maria, and now it's time to go back to our favorite place of Fuchsia with Ace Combat 7. See you all then. Peace.